Next story, more than 1,000 officers in the UK's biggest police force are revealed to be either suspended or on restricted duties today, with scores facing the sack every month for years to come as the Metropolitan Police purges its elite units in a bid to make things right. We ask if it's able to police itself, or is it time to break it up? The Met deal with everything from anti-terrorism to protecting airports, guarding the royal family, and, of course, looking after a city of 9 million people. But it spent years in a state of permanent scandal.
We have slipped up. There are systemic failings in how we've protected our integrity.
These events have been absolutely dreadful, and I speak for my colleagues when I say we are furious.
Isn't it astonishing that this man was allowed to remain a serving police officer for as long as he was?
This is a matter that we are truly sorry for.
I'm being sort of absolutely clear we're going to be sort of sacking and prosecuting more officers because we've got hundreds of people who shouldn't be there.
On behalf of the Metropolitan Police Service, I am truly sorry that they have suffered at the hands of this police officer.
Well, new boss Mark Rowley says he's taking things much more seriously, but when 3 officers in every 100 are facing misconduct charges, maybe it's too big a job for one man. I'm joined now by Nusrit Mehtab, former Met Police Superintendent. Nusrit, welcome. I mean, you've seen these numbers today. What do you make of that 1,000 figure?
Numbers are absolutely eye-watering and unbelievable. Certainly, I haven't seen anything like that in my career. And the question has to be, how has the police got to this stage? What's happened? I know that there's been systemic failings in terms of recruitment, vetting, and, you know, these people didn't just slip through the cracks. They walked through the front door. Actually, they were pulled across the table because there was this recruitment drive and the standards on vetting were really low. We know that. Secondly comes that once they get in, it's about the red flags, the fact, the culture that nurtures them. A majority are silent in terms of what they're doing. People know what's going on, and that's not, you know, you've talked about this earlier, about people knowing what's going on, but not being able to say anything. And if they do say something, they're vilified, isolated. And we've seen that with Baroness Casey. Her reviews proved all that. His Majesty's inspectors have told us the same thing. It's not new. It also comes down to, I think it's very important, is leadership. There's been poor leadership. You know, the sergeants and inspectors are the people that are on the ground level that will be able to see these complaints. Some of these people, I mean, certainly if you look at Wayne Couzens, had a name called the rapist, yet that didn't... You know, it didn't seem to ring any bells. And that's because... as well, it was. And, you know, various other names which are quite horrific when you think that these predators are in plain sight. And most predators, I think, in any industry, whether it's the police or anywhere else, operate within plain sight of everybody else.
Do these... I mean, these are big numbers, you know, 1,000 officers, etc. There's a whole range of issues. It may not all be sexual. It might not be racism. It could be a whole raft of different alleged misdemeanours. But when you look back at your time in this is your police force we're talking about. You know, you were a proud serving officer in the Met. You reached a senior position. Do you recognise this? Does it surprise you to see that number, or do you look at it now and go, do you know what, that's about right?
It doesn't surprise me. I do recognise the Met that they're talking about, but some of the most horrific cases certainly weren't evident when I was serving. And I mean, I served on professional standards. I was heading professional standards, and nothing like this came to me at my desk. So surprised in certain aspects of it, certainly by the number and some of the gravity. I know you're saying that there's different elements of what's gone on. It's not all about violence against women and girls, but the majority are, and they range from domestic abuse, sexual assault, and the most senior one, and the Assistant Commissioner himself has said, is rape. And so, you know, it's a different type of thing coming forward. And we've got, you know, it comes back. How have we got here? And if you look, it's about institutional denial. And an example that I'll give you that shows is that there's been defending the indefensible. If you look at the ex-commissioner, Cressida Dick, and you look at the case of Bianca Williams, the athlete that was stopped and searched, 3 days after that, she defended her officers, saying There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. My officers haven't done
Any
anything
officer
wrong.
would do what they did, I think. you
Any
said,
officer
paraphrasing that.
in his or her worth their salt would have done the same.
Yeah.
And there was this denial, and this allowed people to become brave and become courageous and think we're untouchable. And so this culture has made that culture of denial, has got us where we are now.
Is it too big? I mean, the scandals have been there for many years, and there is a disproportionate amount within the Met. I know it's huge. It's the biggest, I think it's the biggest police force in Europe, possibly one of the biggest in the world. It's absolutely massive. 9 million people it looks after. You know, are officers deployed in the right area? Is it about morale? Is it about the fact that it's just too oversized, overblown, and maybe just needs breaking up? Would that be a starting point?
I don't think I agree with breaking the Met up, because it's one of the best police services in the world. It's not about how big it is, it's about poor performance, it's about austerity cuts, and it's about leadership. It's about not having the people in place who care about what they're doing and not being training leaders. Look, Met doesn't train people to be leaders. At every rank, it's about teaching them technical skills about how to do the job. How can you manage something when you don't know what you're doing? And a lot of the people that I've talked about, the sergeants and inspectors, are the first, if you like, the port of call to deal with these matters. They don't know how to deal with them, or they become so much, you know, one of the boys that they overlook that behaviour. And when people come to them to complain, and for them to take professional standards and professional ethics to be a priority, that should be the golden thread running throughout policing. It isn't, and it hasn't been a priority. So that needs to be tackled now. In terms of dismantling the Met, that isn't the answer for me, because that won't take away what's happened, and that's poor leadership, not tackling the culture. That's what they need to focus on and concentrate. Commissioner's got a big job to do, and, you know, it's going in the right direction, slowly but surely. One important thing to remember is that these 1,000 officers that we've got are the ones that have come through the system, and it's taken a long time for them to get here. But there will be many more. There'll be a backlog of those officers coming through that will deal with it. And I think the public have to be prepared that there is yet worse to come.
Let's get a brief panel reaction on this specific story. I mean, Jake, even as recently as Cressida Dick leaving, I mean, she, you know, felt she left, you know, everything was kind of tickety-boo. We were just echoing the comments she made about one very high-profile arrest. There was almost a kind of nothing-to-see-here situation. She goes, somebody new comes in and says, hang on a second, this place is contaminated from top to bottom. And I'm sure that is the correct approach. I mean, my view is the Met is too big. It tries to do too much. It's a, you know, if it's 3%, I think there are thereabouts of officers who remove. That means that, you know, 97% of officers will be absolutely appalled by this culture of misogyny, racism, homophobia that has been uncovered. But I do think just having another review probably isn't enough. We need to look at real reform. Let's take counter-terrorism out. Let's take royal protection out of it. And then potentially let's look at splitting it. Because we don't hear these sorts of stories. I'm sure it goes on, but to this extent, about smaller police forces around the UK. So maybe small is beautiful and the Met is too big. How hard should it be, Sonia, to teach people not to be rapists or racist? Because that's what we're dealing with here.
Well, I mean, this shouldn't be something that requires an awful lot of effort in one respect. Well, I mean, it shouldn't, in the sense that the police are our law enforcers, and yet you've got people breaking the law in some really terrible ways in the police itself. I think part of the issue is that the police attracts a lot of very decent men and women who want a career of public service, who want to keep the public safe. But it also attracts abusers and manipulators and corrupt people who work for organised crime, and particularly, I think, abusive men. And, you know, there is something about a career in policing that is attractive to those people because of the power that the role of a police officer has in communities. And so I think that vetting is incredibly important, and it doesn't seem to me like there has been anything close enough to the strength of vetting that you need. And I think Nusrat's totally right that that is partly because there's been such a recruitment issue. So recruitment has had to happen very quickly. And it is those red flags and spotting those red flags. But you have to start from the starting point point that the police attracts a lot of good men and women, but some very bad people too. And that has to be...
How can we expect young women who are attacked on the streets of London to have the confidence to go up to a Metropolitan Police officer and report it when they have these sorts of issues? That's how much it undermines public trust. And that's why it's got to change.
It's the culture. By breaking the Met up, you don't change. It's the culture you have to tackle. The very things that we've talked about. Then it won't happen because it won't be tolerated. Professional standards has to be the golden thread that runs through this, and that's what's been missing. It's not been a priority.
Nusrit, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Back with more from our panel. Sonia and Jake are staying with me